Hey Ben, welcome to BIOS, Stories That Shape Us, last year edition. Love having you here today and hearing your perspective. First off, how would you describe your cultural background?
Yeah, for sure. I am African Canadian. In that sense, my parents are from Ghana. Born and raised there, they migrated to Canada in the early 1990s. Went to British Columbia first, then moved from Vancouver, British Columbia to Guelph, Ontario, where I was born. And my dad finished his PhD in Canada, and then we moved to the capital city of Ottawa when I was 3 years old. So grew up in Canada, but always knew what it meant to be from Ghana. Parents spoke the language around me constantly, so I understand the language fluently. Speaking it, I think I'm more hesitant because I'm nervous of my accent, but I think I can speak it a lot better than I ever thought I could now. Also, I think it's important for me to identify and say that I'm Black. And when I say that, I want to point out the fact that being African Canadian is different than being African American, in the sense of the history that lies through the history of America, but there is a resonance that occurs between all Black people whenever you see each other from any path, from any country you're from, any background or any amalgamation of cultures that you adapt because you're from Canada or from America. And so that is a similar rating. So even though the experiences, I think, of Black people in America are varied from the common experience of Black people in Canada, there's an echoing, and the pain and the experience and the joys are echoed to Black Canadians just as much and very deeply.
So along those lines, what has being Black in your community meant for you?
That's a good question. And I think I sigh like that because there is excitement, but also there's a heaviness. Being Black in the communities that I've grown up in or been around has been something that I've been excited about. Being a minority, being like something that someone who stands out. I have liked that, I've enjoyed that. And I think when tragedy happens around the world, or things happen on TV, on the news that come to life, things that have been happening forever but are brought to the surface for everybody to see, the heaviness comes with having to be the professional of your ethnicity, having to be the professional of your culture. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's almost like a demand that kind of comes out of nowhere that's like very taxing. No one ever, asks anything until they see something, which makes sense, but there's just pressure that you have to have all the answers. And people come, like when things happen, they come and start giving you their apologies and stuff. And for me and my communities, it's had to become the person who's a professional, who's has to have all the explanations for everything that happened or that has occurred or that's going on. Yeah.
That's quite a burden.
Yeah.
What is something that you celebrate because of your skin?
Yeah. I think the culture that exists, I've loved just the bond that occurs when you see somebody else who looks like you. I love the history that occurs that you can study and know, things that have been forgotten, and then discovering that is something I get really excited about. Food, I celebrate that. And I think of those things, and I think I've come to celebrate them even more now because growing up around places where I was one of the few Black people for a long time, there was like a shame, or like I would hide it. I loved sharing stories with like the youth and stuff about like the one time I had like, my mom sent me with like rice and peas to school and people kind of made fun of me for it and I was super ashamed. And I've grown to learn this boldness and like to love cooking my food and love looking up recipes and love spending time with the things that make me Ghanaian or make me a Black person and wearing clothing and things like that. So the culture aspects make me so excited. I love them, love them.
And then on the flip side, Ben, what are painful experiences you've had because of your skin?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like hindsight, where you really get to look back and you're like, some of those things that happened were really strange. The people who are in positions of power, the people who teach you, the presidents of groups or the leaders, the prime ministers, right? No one looks like you. The officials in communities, no one looks like you. And that's like something that like subliminally starts to add up, subconsciously starts adding up in your head as a kid. And it almost makes you feel like you'll always be inadequate. Like maybe I'll never have a role like that. I think another painful thing that I think of and I hold on to is that because of the way I look and because of the things that happen to people who look like me, I have to deal with people not believing me, of believing my experience. And they don't want to understand more because of how much it'll shake their reality. People think that they deserve to say whatever they want and get away with it. Or people deserve to think however they want and it's fun because they deserve this freedom, quote unquote, while neglecting the pain it might cause someone else. And it's harmful, some of the things that people can think, some of the things people think they can get away with saying, and think that they deserve it, or you shouldn't feel bad about it, or that's not your experience. And it's like, I can tell you my story, you can listen to it and not feel any sorrow. And I think like that's like so painful that like my experience isn't enough to hold on to believe. The stories that I can share won't be enough. It's like the reality of like when it comes to you, like someone might hear you and not feel anything. Not saying you tell the stories to have people feel bad, but just that human ability to feel like people are just holding back from you, holding back from me in my experience. And that can be quite painful because it's like, do you not see me as a human? Do you not see me here?
How would you invite people to be more empathetic to the Black experience then? Yeah,
I think people have said this all month, and definitely spending time. I think it's one thing to have people who look different than you in your circles. I think that's important. But I will always say, until you have somebody that you love in those shoes, it's hard for you to ever feel or be empathetic towards. I bring up my wife, Kalmini, as a great example. I think in the society that she lived in and she grew up in, she never had to question her thoughts. She never had to wonder if she was thinking something that was harmful or not. And then when she met me and we fell in love with together and started doing life together, she had to come and address these things that she never questioned. And there was a process of unlearning. And there was a process of learning to love better. And there's a process of feeling because it's humanity. And I think that's what's important. That's the part that's a struggle, and people are intimidated by that process. But it's an important process for us to do better. I think the calling from Jesus is not just to be nice to people, but to love one another. And that's a hard thing to do, and it's not easy, but it's important. And it's an important work. If we want to be more loving to anybody, in any community, and so look at somebody like that's your sibling, that's your brother, that's your sister. Love the story where Jesus says, like, these are my brothers and sisters and my mother. And that's the type of empathy that we need to do to anybody of a community that doesn't look like us. And so if people want to be more empathetic towards the Black community, they need to start looking at us as their brothers and sisters and their moms and dads and their cousins. You know, I think even to our parents and my in-laws and such, it's like, they're gonna have to realize, I mean, it was one thing as a Black person marrying to the family, but their grandkids will be Black, right? And that's something that they have to reflect on. And they've been so amazing people willing to learn and unlearn and revisit and be present for me. And I just think of that, like, that's also another stage, right? They have to really, now my blood is Black too. Or not, rather than just someone marrying into it. You see all humans as your siblings, as your family, and that will change everything.